But I know now I've had to work through that and struggle with it, and I've denied it like hell for 5 years, and I can't deny it anymore.
Elizabeth says she started seeing creatures like these around her home in Perth in 1992.
There were 3 beings standing there. They had large shaped heads, bigger at the top to the chin at the bottom, large almond-shaped eyes, small bodies, legs and arms, and sort of grey in appearance. But they looked at me with a sense of intent and intelligence.
Soon after, Elizabeth's daughter talked of being visited by a lady during the night. Elizabeth believes it was one of the same beings.
And I looked down on the desk, and here was a drawing of this being, this same being that I had seen. And I said to Jessica, who did that? Because I knew that at 2.5, her drawings were scribble drawings. And she said, oh, that's the lady. I tried to rationalise it, but I knew that I wasn't imagining this stuff. You know, there was something in me that told me that there was more to these experiences.
They're looking at me again.
Elizabeth then turned to hypnotherapy to try and uncover what she couldn't understand. This session was recorded last year with visiting American UFO researcher John Carpenter.
I don't want to give the baby up.
What seems to have come up in hypnosis is that I've had children taken from me, babies taken from me that are growing up on crafts. And this is just absolutely bizarre, you know, talking about this. I mean, you talk about this, but, you know, at first you struggle with it. I mean, you can't fully comprehend this, but what I could comprehend was the emotion around it.
I know what they're doing. They say it's time. They tell me with their mind.
The emotions are so real, they're raw, you know, the grief is there, the terror is something like I've never felt before.
They're just doing what they're doing.
What are they doing?
They're getting the equipment ready.
Part of the reason why they're involved here on Earth is to help us awaken, but there seems to be some sort of reciprocal type of arrangement whereby, you know, they're coming to Earth and they're creating a new race of beings, or creating some sort of hybrid race of beings.
I used to think, okay, I'm dreaming, until I used to be able to get up, go to the bathroom, make a cup of tea, come back, sit down, they'd still be waiting for me. And I think, oh.
Elizabeth and colleague Mary Rodwell now run a support group in Perth for people who've had alien experiences.
And this is what I mean, my business is emotional trauma. That's why I'm here. And I won't deal with fantasy. I can't deal with fantasy. So it's about emotional trauma. These people are stressed quite desperately with fear and anxiety about a lot of things that they only have a vague idea often about, but often it is because they remember being taken.
I went 3 months with barely any sleep. If you remember, I told you about 11 or 12 weeks, barely any sleep.
Most of them just want to live an ordinary life. They don't want this to happen. So for them to have the chance to at least talk about it and release all the anxiety and fear around that as much as they can around talking about it, it seems that through that there is real healing.
For me, I became very frightened that I would be labelled crazy or, you know, hallucinate, whatever it was, and that I couldn't have somebody to relate this experience to that would honour my experience.
Elizabeth has always kept journals about her experiences, which she is now using to write a book.
I saw a grey being appear, white-grey colour. In the dream, I was searching for my son, even though the child dream of trying to run away from several grey beings, but as fast as I ran or wherever I really don't expect someone to be able to say, absolutely, you know, this is real, because, you know, you always doubt yourself, but you know that it's real, and you have to come to some point and stop denying it, and that's what I'm starting to do.
Sorting out the facts around the UFOs can be tough. Unless, of course, there's something that science can put to the test.
Earlier in the program we saw photographs taken by Doug Page. The time exposures show what Doug believes is a UFO hovering near his home in 1996.
Now, has this been observed by other people as well?
Practically all of Melbourne.
Okay, so that was seen but not as a streak, because this is a time exposure. So it was simply an object of some sort traveling in somewhat of a line, but as you can see, it goes up and down here. This type of negative sleeve will take...
The professor would like to examine the negatives that come before and after the pictures in question. But Doug has used the ends of rolls of film and discarded the shots he felt didn't work.
Now, when the films were actually ready for handling, I'd lay them out and I went through them and I go with the scissors and I just go cut, cut, into the bin, cut, cut, put it there, and that's what I did.
Okay.
After examining the camera the shots were taken with and checking density readings on the negatives, the next step is to enhance the images on the computer.
I don't rely on computers for analysis. They're a bit of a tool. They sometimes let us see things a little bit better, but to actually definitively say that a particular thing is something, I stay away from that. How did you focus the camera?
Just on infinity.
Okay, so if you focused on infinity, technically the tower should be sharper in focus than the tree.
Should be, shouldn't it? Mm-hmm. But it's not.
Interesting question, isn't it?
It's a good one. The only trouble is there's no sort of guarantee, of course, in the darkness that it hasn't moved offset either, but I had that set for infinity.
Okay.
With some of the technical questions out of the way, it becomes an issue of individual perception.
Very specific things here. I see a disc-shaped object. I see something with a rim. Okay, there is definitely a lip. There are what appears to be lights. There's big, there's another small one in between, another one. So we've got something that is geometrically laid out. You can see a texture, and you can see definitely on the dark side of it something. So something's in shadow. I mean, it looks like a traditional, every day of the week, comic book flying saucer.
My first impression of this when I saw it, again, was a trumpet, a circular object here, that we have a bell shape that comes out, like so. This is unexplained optical either artifact, phenomena,
or reality,
or it could be could be an object, but it is totally undefinable.
And of technical concern is the fact that the start of the time exposure is more in focus than the end shape.
Does it make any sense to you that if this was moving and it's decelerating, would that have a bearing on the shape of the line? If it was slowing? Because
no, it shouldn't. It should be exactly the same sharpness.
Despite question marks over issues like that, the professor is able to reach some conclusions.
I don't believe that it's been faked. I think it is probably something that was traveling through the air. What it would be, I wouldn't know, and there's no indication from the photographs that would give me any clue.
There are points there that I haven't considered, such as the object, could well be a phenomenon that that I've never heard of. So I mean, we've got to keep an open mind.
I don't know, maybe between 6 and 8, I would assume.
Okay. They were fairly intense, or?
Yeah, they were very close together as well.
Right, okay.
4 years ago, Kelly Carr was a mother and housewife with no interest in spaceships or aliens. Now she's using technology to reconstruct images of her own encounter.
It does give the idea of the lights there, but, the brightness of the light, it gives a good impression, except that the colour doesn't seem right.
Kelly's account starts in August 1993.
My husband and I were driving up to my girlfriend's place in Monbulk, which is in the Dandenong Mountains. We were driving on Belgrave Hallam Road, and it was just on dusk. I saw what I thought was round orange lights in the field. It looked unusual to me.
Later that night, retracing their route home, Kelly noticed something else unusual.
It's about a kilometre or so in front of us, about twice the height of the treetops. We could see this object, which at first I thought was a blimp. It had the shape of a blimp, but it was light. As we got closer to it, the light seemed to sort of separate, and it was actually these a row of round lights, and they were orange. It appeared like there was silhouettes standing in these round orange circles, like people, but you could only see the black outline. Well, I just said to my husband, look, there's people in there. And the minute I said that, it shot off to the left of us. Within 1 or 2 seconds, it was gone completely. About a kilometre or two further down the road, as we kept driving, I came across what I thought was a screen or a wall of light across the road. my heart started racing and the adrenaline was sort of pumping through my body, and I'm thinking, we've just seen this back down there, we're in for, you know, a close encounter. Then the next instant, nothing. We seem to have actually covered a fair distance that I don't even remember covering. It might have been possibly close to a kilometre that I don't remember actually travelling. There was no light. There was nothing blocking the road.
Kelly says it wasn't until weeks later she remembered actually getting out of the car that night.
And I saw that there was another car that had pulled up 100 metres down the road. Then I walked around the front of the car to where my husband was standing on the other side, and we started walking across the road together. As we were walking across the road, I looked down and I saw that the other people were getting out of the car and starting to walk as well. So I was quite happy that there was other people there who were seeing the same thing that we were. And we walked up along here to where the fence is. Right out in front of us is this huge craft. I was totally awestruck. You know, it was science fiction coming to life. There wasn't any fear then. It was just all total awe. We stood here, I guess side by side, my husband and I, for about 30 to 45 seconds. Then this tall, dark being just appeared in front of the craft, and he was followed by about another 7 or 8 that appeared straight behind him. I felt this energy go through me. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before in my life. It was like some sort of low-level frequency that came in waves, but it was so dense that I could actually physically feel it going through my body. And that feeling absolutely terrified me. It was like, I can't even explain the horror that I felt just feeling this. And I began screaming. The minute I did, the eyes on these things lit up, and they came charging across the field. Halfway across, they split up into 2 groups. Some headed off down there, and the rest came directly towards us. I felt this blow to my stomach, and the next thing you know, I'm back here somewhere on the grass. It literally lifted me off of my feet. And I thought I was going to die. I thought if I don't get up now, I'm going to pass out and I'm going to die. I'm not going to come back to consciousness, you know. So I pulled myself up into a sitting position, and when I sat up, I couldn't see anything, and it was like there was just black in front of my eyes. I want you to try stretching it down a little bit as well.
Kelly is not the only one who saw these images that night. For the first time ever, independent witnesses have given the same account of a close encounter. Even though Kelly has never met Jane, Glenda and Bill from the other car she saw, she has seen the sketches they drew for UFO researchers.
They've drawn the same circles of light around the top of the craft with these blue lines coming down, ending in a semicircle on the ground. They've actually also drawn a tripod underneath, which was something I didn't see that night. It becomes very clear then that we were all looking at the same thing, and it wasn't your average saucer-shaped craft. Basically, the second party were able to draw sketches of the beings very similar to the ones that I had, and they're not your usual little grey things that are, you know, media propaganda. I found a small red-coloured equilateral triangle underneath my navel, which I guess in reality provoked only a minor curiosity at the time. It was oddly geometric, and I did wonder, you know, how something like that could get on me that looked like a burn without me feeling it.
At UFO conferences, where Kelly is now a keynote speaker, she adds strength to her own story by showing photographs of physical marks left on one of the other women.
We're all left with triangular marks under our navels, but the ones that were marks that were actually photographed, the first one came from Glenda, which is it's a series of 3 small red dots along the inner thigh. And both Jane and Glenda were marked with these dots. I wasn't. Glenda had a ligature mark around her ankle, which was quite severe bruising. It looked like she'd been strapped down to something.
UFO researchers have also reported finding physical traces of the site where all witnesses said the encounter happened, particularly in relation to where the craft landed.
Inside that semicircle was actually a triangular formation of 3 points spaced 6 metres apart, which correspond with the tripod that was drawn underneath the girl's craft.
To this day, Kelly still doesn't know exactly what happened to her that night.
Tried a little bit.
And those vivid memories, the fear that she felt.
That's very good. It's finally come out to what I'm looking for. And I think a lot of people, you know, might have experienced the fear in a nightmare where you're being chased or something like that, and it's a terror that you feel that, you know, sometimes can wake you up or whatever, but it's absolutely horrifying when you're dreaming it. And that's exactly what I was feeling while I was totally awake. That sort of terror, actually having to feel it while you're conscious and physically awake and feel it as a reality, is like a living nightmare, like a nightmare come to life.
We've moved out onto 138 acres. We don't have electricity. We use all our own fuel, like for both our fires. We're in the process of trying to become self-sufficient as far as food's concerned. We just lead just a very different lifestyle.
Denise Borrett says it's her encounters with strange beings that have helped her make the decision to live this way.
There's one of our missing. I believe at the moment that they're giving us quite a dire warning about what's happening to the planet and what's going to happen to us unless we actually wake up to what we're actually doing. They seem to open parts of your mind that aren't open before, and or they help you to do that. I don't know, but all I know is that I'm a very changed person since I've had my experience.
Well, lifestyle changes you'd think shouldn't happen to people if these things aren't physically occurring. So I guess it's a little piece of evidence to suggest that something really startling and extraordinary must have happened to a person because of the changes that they do go through.
Denise says her visitors have the ability to render her husband unconscious, so he never actually experiences the aliens, but he does have physical scars.
Well, I know I've got a lot of scars on my body, and I know basically where they all came from, but this one, in that particular place, I've got no idea. I just woke up one morning and I happened to comment to her, so I've got this funny little mark on my arm, and she had a look and she had one in exactly the same place because she said she could remember it happening.
And I can actually remember them cutting it. I can remember it was like a little spatula or whatever. But again, there was no pain or anything, and the next day mine had completely healed up, whereas Les's had actually scarred.
And I thought, well, they're in identical spots and they're identical size, so obviously something was going on.
People who've had multiple abduction experiences very often get very concerned about the environment. They get very concerned about healthy lifestyles. They get very interested in the possibility of life elsewhere. They get very interested in promoting the message that there's something actually going on.
If things do go haywire on the planet, like I believe they will, that we at least will be able to feed ourselves and not have to rely on man-made energy to keep ourselves going.
It's pretty obvious that the people that had these experiences are convinced there's more to what's out there than most of us realise. They're also the first to admit that their stories can be hard to accept. What they want us to do is be prepared to listen.
I suppose people got to make their own minds up, but we can honestly say that what happened, happened, and there's no doubt about that.
Perhaps they're extraterrestrial, we don't know. Perhaps it's military experimentation. Perhaps there's new things in this earth that we don't know about.
I don't know what they are. I know what happened to me, but I don't know anything about them.
Well, I'd have to say that the evidence seems to be fairly compelling, that we seem to have some sort of alien life form, just in what it is. You've got to keep an open mind.
And since I've accepted it, I think I've really started to see it's not really bad. There's a lot of good in what they're actually doing.
And it's like they're saying to us, you know, human beings can do so much more. We have these wonderful capacities to heal and to heal each other and to understand ourselves so much more. And we're not yet.
Where they come from, I honestly don't know. I would hope that before I die, one day I find out.